Top 10 Most Racist States in America. As much progress as America has made in addressing racism, it's still a problem that plagues the country in various forms. Racism can be found in every corner of the United States, but some states are known to be more discriminatory than others. Number 1, Georgia. Like many states in America, Georgia has a complex history when it comes to race relations. Georgia was once a hub of the slave trade and later became a hotbed of resistance during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. While Georgia has made significant strides in promoting racial equality and justice in recent years, racism and discrimination still exist in some parts of the state. There have been several recent cases of racism and discrimination in Georgia that have garnered national attention. In February 2020, Ahmaud Arbery, a black man, was shot and killed by 2 white men while out for a jog in Brunswick, Georgia. The men claimed they were making a citizen's arrest, but Arbery's family and supporters believed the killing was racially motivated. The incident sparked outrage across the country and led to calls for justice for Arbery and his family. Number 2, Louisiana. Like Georgia, Louisiana also has a complex history of racism. In recent years, Louisiana has faced controversy surrounding issues such as police brutality, mass incarceration, and access to voting rights. For example, the state has one of the highest incarceration rates in the country, with a disproportionate number of those incarcerated being black men. Additionally, there have been cases of police brutality and racial profiling in the state, with some incidents leading to protests and calls for reform. In March 2021, a report revealed that Louisiana State University had mishandled allegations of sexual misconduct and harassment by several football players, including allegations of racial discrimination against black players. The scandal led to calls for accountability and reform within the university. Number 3, Maryland. In 2015, Freddie Gray, a black man, died while in police custody in Baltimore, Maryland. His death sparked protests and unrest in the city and led to calls for police reform and accountability. In 2018, a study found that Baltimore and other cities in Maryland had engaged in redlining, a discriminatory practice where banks and other lenders refused to lend to people in certain neighborhoods based on their race or ethnicity. The study found that these practices had contributed to the current wealth gap between white and black families in Maryland. In recent years, Maryland has seen an increase in hate crimes, particularly against Jewish and Muslim communities. In 2019, for example, a man was arrested and charged with a hate crime after he allegedly harassed and assaulted a group of Jewish people in Baltimore. Number 4, Michigan. In 2014, Flint, Michigan switched its water source to the Flint River to save money, but the water was not properly treated, leading to lead contamination and other health issues. The crisis disproportionately affected the city's black residents, leading to allegations of environmental racism. According to a 2018 study, black renters in Michigan are more likely to be discriminated against than renters of other races. The study found that black renters were less likely to be shown available units and more likely to be asked for additional documentation and have higher fees. Michigan has also faced criticism for practicing racism in its education system, which is one of the most segregated in the country. Number 5, New York. New York State has a long history of housing discrimination, with many black and Latino residents facing barriers to renting or buying homes in certain neighborhoods. Many of New York City schools are highly segregated, with predominantly black and Latino schools often lacking resources and funding compared to predominantly white schools. New York has seen an increase in hate crimes, particularly against Jewish and Muslim communities. In 2019, for example, there was a string of anti-Semitic attacks in the New York City area. Ohio is number 6 on our list. There have been several high-profile incidents of racism and discrimination in Ohio in recent years. Ohio has seen several high-profile cases of police brutality and excessive use of force in recent years, including the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2020, which sparked protests across the country, including in Ohio. In 2018, a white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia led to violence and unrest, and a group of neo-Nazis marched in Dayton, Ohio just a few months later. Ohio has been criticized for its education system, which is one of the most inequitable in the country. Many of the state's predominantly black and low-income schools lack proper resources and sufficient funding, leading to disparities in educational outcomes. Next, we will talk about Vermont. In 2018, a black man was beaten and left for dead in a parking lot in Burlington, Vermont, in what was believed to be a hate crime. The attackers were convicted of assault and robbery, but not of a hate crime. There have been several instances of racial profiling in Vermont, particularly in traffic stops. Black and Latino drivers are more likely to be stopped and searched by the police than white drivers, even though white drivers are more likely to be found with contraband. Black residents of Vermont have reported experiencing microaggressions, subtle, often unintentional acts of discrimination in their daily lives. These microaggressions can include assumptions about their backgrounds or experiences, or racially insensitive comments. Number 8. West Virginia. West Virginia has a complex history when it comes to race relations. The state has a predominantly white population, and people of color make up a small minority of the population. Black West Virginians have faced discrimination and inequality throughout the state's history, and these issues persist to this day. In West Virginia, there have been several incidents of racism and discrimination in recent years. One area where Black West Virginians face significant disparities in education. Black students in West Virginia are more likely to attend high-poverty schools and have lower graduation rates than their white peers. Black West Virginians also face higher rates of chronic diseases, such as diabetes and heart disease, than their white counterparts, which can be linked to disparities in access to health care and other factors. Number 9. Hawaii. Hawaii is a state with a diverse population. While there are certainly incidents of racism and discrimination that occur there, the state has generally been praised for its multiculturalism and efforts to promote equality. Despite these efforts, Hawaii has seen many cases of racism in recent years. Native Hawaiians are the indigenous people of Hawaii, and they have faced significant discrimination and marginalization throughout the state's history. In recent years, there have been efforts to address these issues, but there is still a long way to go. There have been several high-profile cases of racial harassment and discrimination in Hawaii in recent years. Finally, number 10, New Mexico. It is the final state on our list. While New Mexico has made progress in promoting equality and addressing racism, there are still incidents of discrimination and bias that occur. Native Americans in New Mexico face significant disparities in areas such as healthcare, education, and employment. For example, Native American students in New Mexico have lower graduation rates than their non-native peers, and Native Americans have higher rates of poverty and unemployment than other groups in the state. There have been incidents of racial profiling and bias by law enforcement in New Mexico. For example, in 2019, the American Civil Liberties Union (ACLU) filed a lawsuit against the city of Albuquerque, alleging that police officers were using excessive force against people of color and individuals with mental illness.